In this video I'm going to be building up this Tamyia RX7 R1 kit, and as you'll see it doesn't entirely go to plan. So the first thing I did was get the body out because there's a couple of things I needed to address. On the back we've got these two pins that are for the regular spoiler that I won't be using, so they need to come off. And there's also these lines on the back, these seam lines that break the edge of the bumper moulding. So those pins came off quite easy, just snipped off the bulk of it with some sprue cutters and then sanded it down with a sanding stick and then some fine sandpaper just to get it smooth. For those mould lines down the bumper I used some Tamiya sanding sponge. I really need to get some more different grades of this because it works really well, but they were really hard to come off and some of them actually revealed like cracks and divots underneath them, which I used a bit of Humbrol model filler. It's like a almost liquid model filler to press in and fill those gaps. So there you can see them fixed and sanded back after it was dry. Next thing I wanted to do was get the chassis plate off and cut out all of the sub-assemblies for the suspension. Not glue them yet, just push them all together, push fit, and then a bit of tape over the top to hold them into the chassis so I could do some test fitments on some wheels. I knew I wanted a track look for this, so my first thought for wheels were these 5-spoke end keys. They just didn't quite sit right for me. Then I tried some GTR wheels, again not really what I was after. I tried my 3-spoke Advans, my favourite wheel of all time, but not quite right for this project either. And then I found these in my stash, which I think are a BBS type from some other kit. I think they'll work perfectly. So I split them down, and as you can see they're 2-piece wheels with a separate lip and rim, and I just decided that the inner part, this bit here, needed a little bit of sanding, and then I sprayed it with some Model Air metallic copper. Just a light dusting and then one quick heavy coat, and I think that'll do nicely. So with the tape and everything taken off again, I've got the chassis plate and I need to remove this thing which is meant to be the turbo housing, but I'm going to do an actual turbo conversion, my first one on this model, so that needs to go. It's just a case of cutting it off without damaging the base plate that the engine that comes in the kit sits on. With that out of the way, it was a coat of XF1 flat black. I think matte black chassis look good, so I tend to do that on all the kits I've built so far. Onto some fiddly masking to try and get around the gearbox and the sort of centre brace plate that goes alongside the prop. So I want to do those in a metal colour of some sort. Just a case of lots of little bits of masking tape and putting them into place with some tweezers. I'm still not brilliant at this, but each time I do it I get a little bit better. I also wanted to try and do these tie straps for the fuel tank in the back. Thought it'd be nice to highlight them. So there you go, after it was all taped up, we are ready for paint. Again using some Model Air, this time metallic steel. Also painted the V-mount rad in this as well. So for those straps on the back, I decided I was going to use some more of the copper. It didn't turn out very well in the end, but as you'll see later on, the weathering hid the poor paint job. So for the body, I'm using zero paints for the first time on this one, and we're using their light grey primer. I did a dust coat, and I think I was a little overpowered on the air on that, so I ended up turning down the air a little bit for the second and third passes. I waited 5 minutes in between and it came out really well. It's a really nice primer, much better than the water-based one I had been using so far. for all the little bits and pieces for the suspension and drive shafts, put them all on painting sticks, taped off a few bits and pieces, and then shot them all with some Vallejo Model Air steel. I wanted to try some light weathering on the chassis this time, so here I am just dry brushing a little bit of black, which I've watered down to make it a little bit easier to use. You can see it gives a sort of slightly grubby, slightly tarnished effect. So I was happy with that, so I started playing around with some darkest gunmetals and the same black you just saw me using for the gearbox and some more of the pieces underneath. Then using the cocktail stick and some thick black paint, I went around sort of bolt and joint marks to give them a little bit of work, and then painting up some of the linkages with a small brush and what would be the rubber CB boots. I used some signal red for the brake calipers. The calipers themselves are nice, but it would have been nice if there was more detail on the brake discs in this kit. So with everything painted, it was just a case of assembling it all into the two sub-assemblies, front and rear, and getting them installed. Before putting the front plate in, I needed to get the exhaust midsection on, but because I'm doing a custom rear silencer, I've actually cut off one of the major mounting points, so getting this to actually sit down flat was a bit of a nightmare. Once it was stuck, a little bit more super glue for the custom Canon exhaust. That's from the Fujimi GT set. Once that was in, I could put the front sub-assembly on, and then the lower arm and bash plate, which was fiddly to get everything lined up, but not too bad. So with the chassis done, I decided to do the interior next, and as with a lot of the Tamiya kits, the seats that come with it have these 3 injector pin marks on the back, which I needed to fill with some model filler and a cocktail stick. And once it was dry, just sand it back, and then you get a nice smooth seat back. No one ever sees this. Then I gave the tub a coat of matte black along with the seats. I wanted to do a little bit of colour contrast on the front seats, so I masked off the centres and shot them with military grey by Vallejo. The dash comes with individual instrument decals, which I really struggle with doing dash decals. I've never managed to get them right so far, and this build was no exception. So there we go, that's the result I got. Not great. I need to definitely work on my dashboard painting skills. The rest of the interior is fairly simple, just a few little pieces to go together. I didn't bother painting them because they're all standard plastic in the real car anyway. Moving on to the engine, and I wanted to do a single turbo conversion on this and try and do a nice engine bay. First thing was to get the rotor housing pieces together, glue them up. Then on the front goes this plate, which has got the alternator and the oil filler stalk. Then in front of that goes this plate here, but I'm going to be painting that, so it's not going on for now. So I used a little bit of blue tack just to test fit the engine in the engine bay. And now I need to work out where I'm going to be putting the turbo. These are the ones that I got. They're the Hobby Design resin 2-piece big turbos. So with the 2 housings put together, quite a nice little resin turbo. Quite a lot of detail considering how small it is. Now the intake on the 13B is an up and over, but I'll only be needing one pipe. This piece here needs to be cut off. So that sits on the top of the engine. So now with that temporarily in place, I can work out where the turbo is going to sit. And then I used a little bit of milliput putty to make like an attachment plate on the block for it. So while that was drying, I took the plastic airbox assembly that goes along with the plastic that sits along the front of the engine bay, and just cut off all of the bits that we're not going to need. I just want that front strip of plastic that sits underneath where the bonnet lies. And that's where it sits inside the engine. So then I painted the turbo and engine assembly in gunmetal grey, and then took a little brush and just picked out some details on the pulley assembly piece that sits on the front of the engine. Then it's just a case of gluing that on. So there's the engine complete. Then a couple of drops of super glue just to set it on the sump plate that's attached to the chassis. The last thing in the engine bay is the front mount intercooler, which I'm using this intercooler plate that I found in my spares box. And then I just need to make up some intercooler pipe work to the turbo and to the intake, which I'm using styrene rod that I got from the local model shop. So once they were glued on and in the shape that they needed to be, I just gave the whole thing a coat of steel silver just to tie it all together. Now the bonnet I tried to paint and it went wrong, something reacted with the plastic, so I had to coat it in filler primer, and then I shot a coat of gloss black, which you can still see that the plastic's all rippled and wrong. I thought I'd try this C1 metal buffing powder that I got as part of a collection of kit bits I bought secondhand. So you just take the powder on the little like makeup applicator brush thingy and rub it in. And then buff it off with a soft pad. It sort of works, it's hard to show on camera, it is very shiny. It covered some of the weird texture that had appeared on the bonnet, but it's not great if I'm honest. So for painting the body, using Zero Honda Candy Orange from the old 754. It's a two-part paint. So the first thing you see me doing is spray on part one, which is like a metal flake metallic kind of silver. Can't really see it on camera, but it's like a heavy metallic. Then there's a candy orange, which I built up in 3 very thin coats. And to finish it off, I'm using the 2-pack clear coat system, which gives you a thinners, a clear and a hardener. First time I've ever done any 2-coat through an airbrush. And I just followed the instructions on the box and used the ratio it recommended, and I gave it 2 wet coats, which I then set aside to dry, and it is extremely glossy. Unfortunately, underneath there are imperfections in the candy coat that I didn't see because I wasn't paying attention. Then I didn't have window masks for this, so I thought I might try painting in all of the window surrounds with an acrylic marker. This was a stupid idea and didn't work very well at all. So in future I just need to buy masks and not be impatient, or learn how to make my own masks, which is probably what I'll try and do on the next build. I needed to put some black around the door trims. There's like a rubber seal piece that goes around, so it's just a case of taping that off and cutting the line back with a scalpel, and then I used that black marker for doing that, which is what I originally got it for, and that worked fine. So I wanted to use a custom wing. I got this GT one from my bits and pieces box, and it was just a case of assembling it, which was very fiddly. It's got the little pinholes you can see there that you have to line up and then glue together, and getting both sides to line up was a bit tricky. Once it was done, it looks quite nice. I didn't put the legs on, so it would be easier just to put them on a clip when I'm painting. Then it was just a case of adding the windscreen wipers and putting the glass in the body. And for that I'm just using some PVA glue on a brush to go in around the edge whilst holding it in place. And I use the same glue for putting the big plastic lens that goes across the back where the rear lights are. Here's the wing all painted. I used a metallic black for that. Happy with how that came out. A bit of super glue on a cocktail stick to put it on. I overdid it a bit, which made some marks on the paint. Another thing that went wrong on this build. In hindsight, I think next time I do a wing like this, I'll run a piece of tape from the wing to the roof and find the position for it before I put any glue on. Last thing to do was the wing mirrors, which is just adding these little silvery mirror effect plates inside that come in the kit, and then putting everything together. So there we go guys, that's the finished model. There's definitely things I want to improve on going forward. I definitely made some mistakes on this one, but that's okay. I need to treat them as learning opportunities and just try and get better. I'm still quite new to the hobby. I like the colour. I think the colour came out really nice. I'll definitely be using that again on future builds, and I've already started 2 other kits whilst I'm uploading this, so there should be more stuff on the channel very soon. I'll see you in the next one.